Welcome LML for 807 students to today's online lecture. Today's teaching is Lesson 7, Part 2, which discusses the bank as borrower through the taking of deposits. This teaching is a continuation of Part 1 of Lesson 7, which dealt with fixed deposits in particular. In today's lesson, we continue discussing the legal nature of deposits. In Lesson 7, Part 1, we discussed fixed deposits. Today, we will discuss the legal nature of savings deposits, deposits in current accounts, and deposits made at ATMs. We will first start with savings deposits. To understand what is meant by savings deposits, we will first take a look at the operation of a savings account. A savings account is defined in the Code of Banking Practice as an account that is mainly used for the purpose of saving money and earning interest on savings, which can be withdrawn at any time. As the main objective of a savings account is saving rather than transacting, it usually offers less transacting functionality than that of a current or check account. Although it is possible for banks to create different types of savings accounts, practice shows that in general, the savings accounts presently offered by banks have the following characteristics. Firstly, the account is conducted by means of an automated teller machine card or ATM card. An ATM card grants access to the account through an ATM machine. In such a case, withdrawals and deposits are made by inserting the card and the customer's PIN into the machine. Secondly, deposits and withdrawals can be made at any time. There is no notice period for withdrawals. Thirdly, interest is earned on deposits. However, the interest rate is generally low when compared to interest earned on investment accounts. And lastly, the customer can instruct the bank to make payments to third parties, for example, by way of stop orders or debit orders from his or her account. The different types of contracts that come into being between the bank and the savings account holder are as follows. A contract of mutu, or loan for use, is concluded in terms of which the bank borrows the first deposit from the customer and undertakes to borrow all further deposits as well. Although it is theoretically possible that the bank may allow the savings account holder to overdraw, in which case the bank makes a loan to the account holder, this does not happen in practice. Also, a contract of mandate is another type of contract that comes into being between the bank and the savings account holder. In terms of a contract of mandate, the bank undertakes to perform different types of payment methods on behalf of the customer, for example, stop orders or debit orders. Now let's move on to consider deposits in current accounts. Let's look at the operation of a check or current account. The terms check or current account will be used interchangeably as they refer to the same type of account. As you can see, a check account is defined in the Code of Banking Practice. This section of the study guide does make reference to checks as also reflected in the definition of a check account. However, checks have been discontinued from the 1st of January 2021. Please do ignore specific referencing to checks as you will not be examined on it. But please note that other content in your study guide that does not refer directly to checks is still relevant and may be examined on. Banks have created different types of check accounts, often characterized according to different types of income groups. In general, the check account offers the following characteristics. A check account may be conducted by means of an ATM card. Checkbooks used to be issued in conjunction with a check account, but as mentioned, the use of checks have now been discontinued. Despite this, the account is referred to a check or current account. The customer's check account is debited and also credited with the amounts deposited from time to time. The check account is kept by the bank which regularly provides the customer with a statement reflecting debits and credits, as well as the current balance. Deposits on cheque accounts are repayable on demand without prior notice. The cheque account holder may withdraw at an ATM machine with an ATM card. Further, cheque accounts may have more functionality than a savings account. For example, savings accounts do not provide access to overdrafts. Also, cheque accounts generally earn very low interest or none at all on deposits. The different types of contracts that come into being between the bank and the cheque account holder are a contract of mutuum or loan for use, in terms of which the bank borrows the first deposit and undertakes to borrow further amounts that will be deposited. And also a contract of mandate, in terms of which the bank undertakes to carry out payment instructions on behalf of the customer, for example, stop orders or debit orders. We will now discuss deposits and withdrawals by means of automated teller machines or ATMs. Another method of depositing and withdrawing is through the use of an automated teller machine. The ATM is a machine that is linked to the bank's computer system. By using the machine, a customer can operate his or her savings, cheque or current, and credit card account without the intervention of a bank official. The machine is used to withdraw cash and for other banking services such as balance inquiries and prepaid purchases. The system operates by means of a plastic card and personal identification number or PIN, which are made available to the customer. Access to the customer's accounts can be obtained only by inserting the card into the machine and by keying in the correct number on the keyboard. The machine can then be given certain instructions. The most important of these instructions are to pay out an amount in cash, which is then released by the machine, to transfer an amount from one account to another, to accept a deposit, which is inserted into a special slot in the machine, or to request statements reflecting balances. A customer of a bank may use an ATM of another bank. When a customer of a bank uses an ATM of another bank, that other bank acts as an agent of the customer's bank. This is done between banks who have entered into an agreement between themselves, and this agreement is known as SASWICH in South Africa. When cash is deposited in an ATM, the ATM is able to count the cash inserted into the allocated slot in the machine. Once counted, the ATM requests the customer to confirm the amount counted by the machine. The amount is then immediately credited to the customer's account. The bank would, as from that moment, be the borrower of the money in terms of a loan for use or mutuum. Any subsequent loss of the cash would be for the bank's loss. Now let's move on to discuss the risk of unauthorized withdrawals through the use of a customer's ATM card and PIN. The risk of an unauthorized withdrawal at an ATM arises when an unauthorized person gains access to a customer's ATM card and PIN. The ATM acts only on the card and the accompanying correct number. The question is whether the customer may be debited with the amount of such an unauthorized withdrawal. Usually this risk will not arise because most financial institutions offering facilities conclude an express contract with their customers in this regard. The agreement provides that the customer's account may be debited with all withdrawals made by means of the particular card and accompanying PIN. If the bank is notified of a possible unauthorized withdrawal before it takes place, the customer will not have to accept a debit. In the absence of an express agreement that provides that the customer's account may be debited with all withdrawals made by an ATM card and accompanying PIN, it is submitted that it would be a tacit term of the contract. The customer will carry the risk of the unauthorized withdrawal of his or her card until the customer informs the bank of the loss of the ATM card or the unauthorized withdrawal. Now let's consider the case of Vandenberg versus Tenner. In this case, the court referred to the topic of tacit terms and ultimately ruled that it appears that the surrounding circumstances which exist on the conclusion of the contract play an important role when the court has to determine the intention of the parties. A customer who obtains an ATM card realizes that the whole system functions by means of the card coupled with a PIN. He or she also realizes that the identity of the person who inserts the card and keys in the number cannot be checked. Against this background, it seems reasonable to assume that the customer consents to accept a debit for any withdrawal made by means of his or her card and number. It stands to reason that the customer will run this risk only until he or she informs the bank of the possible unauthorized use of that card. The Code of Banking Practice states that a bank accepts the responsibility of the loss resulting from the unauthorized access to a customer's ATM card and PIN in the following circumstances. Firstly, when a card has not yet been issued to the customer and is then used by someone else. Secondly, where the customer has reported loss or theft of the card, or that the PIN has been compromised and thereafter transactions took place that were not authorized or effected by the customer. Thirdly, when money is transferred from the customer's account to his electronic purse after the bank has been informed of the loss or theft and that a PIN, password, or unique means of identification has been compromised. Fourthly, when system malfunctions occur at ATMs or associated systems, which were not obvious or subject to a warning message or notice at the time of use. And lastly, where a credit card transaction is disputed, the bank accepts the burden of proving fraud or negligence, or that the customer has received his or her card. It is expected of the customer to cooperate with the bank and the police with further investigations. In terms of the Code of Banking Practice, a customer will be liable for loss where he or she acted fraudulently and without reasonable care or negligently, which contributed to or caused the loss. Customers are advised to not keep their cards together with a PIN and to not allow anyone else to use the card, PIN, password, or other unique means of personal identification. Customers are also advised to always take reasonable steps to protect the card, PIN, password, and other unique means of personal identification by keeping it secret and secure at all times, and to never disclose them to anyone, including family, friends, or any bank employee offering assistance. Customers are also not to record a PIN, password, or other unique means of personal identification in writing unless adequately disguised. Customers are also to be alert to the risks of muggings, card swapping, and other criminal activity when using ATMs and other services. They are also not to use PINs that are easy to guess. Customers are encouraged to subscribe to receive transaction notifications via SMS to be alerted of any unauthorized activity on their accounts. The Code advises customers to implement these safety practices to protect their banking account. A failure to adhere to them may be indicative of negligence. This online lecture of Lesson 7, Part 2, dealt with page 105 to 111 of your study guide. We hope that you found the teaching informative, and we wish you very well with your studies.